That's what it sounded like recently inside the armored vehicle carrying Nir Maman and his Israeli army comrades out on a patrol somewhere in the West Bank. The video is on his popular Instagram account, where he documents some of his experiences serving with an IDF reserve unit these past 4 months. You can see the blue night vision lights and hear the soundtrack they played en route. Maman was born in Israel. His family moved to Canada when he was young. After high school, he went back to complete his Israeli military service and later served as commando instructor with an elite counter-terrorism unit. But it's been 14 years since he was last deployed. Here in Canada, he has a roomy house in the Toronto suburbs, a wife and 5 kids, and a business training military and law enforcement teams in hostage rescue tactics, urban warfare, and Krav Maga. He was a bodyguard for VIPs and had occasional spots on TV news. At 47, Maman thought his days on Israel's front lines were behind him. Until October 7th. Changed everything. Maman packed up his uniform and some gear and joined thousands of Israelis streaming back to help. Now, to be clear, Maman wasn't called up, and it actually took some doing until the IDF finally agreed to take him back. He's been deployed since November with a light infantry reservist battalion in Hebron. They man checkpoints in the West Bank, investigate possible terrorist cells, and carry out raids. In his off hours, which by his choice have been few and far between, he went to see with his own eyes the burned-out Israeli villages and music festival locations where Hamas terrorists slaughtered 1,200 people and took hundreds more hostage.
This, to me, we've seen a second Holocaust roll out. If we didn't have the IDF this time around, it would have been the exact same as Nazi Germany.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Wednesday, March the 6th, 2024. Welcome to the CJN Daily, a podcast of the Canadian Jewish News, sponsored by Metropia. In his uniform, Nir Maman looks like a Rambo-type character, heavily armed with a special knife and a white beard and helmet covering his shaved head. His unit even nicknamed him Thanos, after the giant supervillain from the Marvel Comics universe. But last week, during a short furlough back home in Toronto, he showed a softer side. He went for a pedicure. He knew he was going to need to pamper his feet after being unexpectedly ordered to cut his visit short and fly back to Israel on the double. They were going into Gaza. I sat down with Maman last week at his home. We talked about what it's been like, why the IDF still actually needs donations of equipment and other supplies, and why it's been so tough to free the hostages. You were living your life in Toronto, doing your training, your company, your personal security, your Krav Maga in the States, and then October 7th happened. So how did it work out for you? Can you walk me through how you ended up being on a plane home? Because no offense, your beard is the same as my husband's. It's a little dark, a little lighter than it was a long time ago when you were last there. So
yes. Yeah, I spent most of my time between Canada and the United States. I have a business here. I have a business in the United States. I'm a reserve deputy sheriff in the United States for the last 5 years. So my policing has been on both sides of the border for the past, since 2002. So specifically, October 7th was a Saturday. October 6th, I was teaching at one of the police academies in Michigan. Drove home. I think it was, Friday, Shabbat. I didn't really understand what was going on. I got these messages.
Yeah, you and everyone else, yeah.
Yeah, I was away from my family for a week. I was exhausted. I had a 6.5-hour drive. I wasn't paying attention to much of anything. And, it's Israel. Every other day of the week, there's something going on. And, the previous 2 years, there's been a lot of noise in Gaza and a lot of protests. Yeah. And so woke up a couple hours later, turned my phone on, and that's when I knew that there was something very abnormal going on. Friends of mine who received the initial alerts to get to our base immediately, everything that they were learning was through WhatsApp, Instagram, Telegram. That's how they began to build their operational plans. They got their bags, they got their guns, they jumped in the cars. In my heart, in my mind, I obviously wish that I was already there, but I was no longer Nir Maman, the single soldier that can pack a bag and go. I have a wife and 5 kids, and all of a sudden I had to put the brakes on my thinking and kind of figure how things were going to play out here. Many Israelis have many friends and colleagues, that have left after their service and moved to other countries, after X amount of time, you are removed from the Bituach Leumi, the national insurance, like social insurance coverage, and therefore you can't serve. You can't do things like that because you got no coverage. You have to understand the phases in which things occurred. Everything that happened the morning of October 7th was a tactically strategized rollout to ensure optimal and efficient application of their plan. So
it's actually shocking but impressive.
They learned how to play us, and we did that. We gave them that. Our country went to sleep. There's a lot of ironies with this war. I mean, this was like the first Yom Kippur War. The country was asleep. There was a big kind of sense of security because of 67. That in 6 days we had no problem, and they taught us differently on the first Yom Kippur War, and it's the same thing here.
It was the same exact weekend.
Yes. We're all waiting for the calmness to happen and the official investigations to go on and the accountability and the explanations to come out, because there's a lot of things here that are very puzzling.
It's a nice word for it, puzzling. I would think you would have other words for it as a soldier.
I do.
What would they be?
There's some things that I've had to remind myself, and I've had to learn to temper what it is I want to say. I have to also remember that I'm an active IDF soldier. I work for my government, so I don't want to compromise that. So I have to tread very carefully.
Even saying that says a lot.
Yes.
So you decide you're going, or you don't decide you're going.
By October 8th, like everybody, I'm on the phone trying to come in, saying, look, I'm getting on a plane. Where do I go? On the basis of many of our special units of reservists of all ages. In some cases, there simply actually weren't even enough guns to hand out. No equipment. But everybody was also being told, hold on a sec, okay? It's overwhelming right now, yes. But I'll speak specifically to our unit, to the Lotal, the counter-terror unit. There's no need for anything right now. We have enough people. Everybody is already doing what they're doing. We're waiting for command to tell us what's going on. Nobody knows if there's going to be an invasion into Gaza. We don't know what's going on, so just sit tight.
So stay in Canada, basically.
Yeah, essentially, yes.
Okay. Well, that wasn't happening.
That was not going to happen, no. I have a lot of current colleagues, past colleagues that are in all kinds of places throughout the government apparatus in Israel and in the IDF. And I found a place with a battalion, Unit 5060. It's an infantry. It's a reserve infantry, light infantry battalion that specializes in the West Bank region, specifically in Hebron. So they said, we're drafting right now. We need guys. Get on the next plane and get over here.
We in Toronto, I'm sure you know, were told, all the civilians, the Jewish community, send them boots, send them medical supplies, send them goggles. They have nothing. Was that the accurate case? And did you get anything from Canada, that you actually used?
1,000% it was the case. You have to understand two prongs here. I know that the IDF was pushing back, saying we have everything. Soldiers are being provided for, and that's utterly and completely false. Regular service of the IDF, they have a lot of everything that they need. The reserves is a whole different field. Okay, and we had about 320,000 reserves. Until this day, you still have soldiers that still don't have the necessary equipment. I flew there with, I think it was 10 or 12 suitcases. 4 or 5 of them was all equipment. The IDF exclaimed, no, soldiers have everything. They have vests, they have helmets, they have knee pads. We were going out on arrest missions to arrest Hamas terrorists, to kick in their doors, go into their homes where they potentially have ambushes waiting for us, and we had soldiers that didn't have ceramic ballistic protection in their vests. We had to rotate vests from soldiers, which is not a good thing to do, for the guys going out on arrest missions. I received
These are like the bulletproof vests, yeah.
Correct. I received IDF issued knee pads when I got there in my kit bag, The knee pads need to have two straps to stay on, okay? One knee pad only had one strap, the other one was ripped, the other one I couldn't even adjust it. I mean, so it's a abysmal situation, unfortunately. So everybody's trying to be self-contained and try to, acquire what they need for their own purposes and their own teams. And it's an ongoing process.
You have your own uniform that you brought with you,
Yes.
right? You have your own gear.
I'm fortunate.
Not
this
weapons,
has been
but gear.
my profession for the last 25 years. And I don't like doing anything, whether I'm teaching a course, whether I'm out on an actual operational deployment. I don't want to be without what I need, and to make sure that it's the most optimal for my safety and for efficacy of my duties, my job.
And they let you wear whatever you bring with you.
It has to
the standard
fall
uniform.
within kind of the norm of the IDF. And what I mean by that is you can't suddenly show up with, woodland camo uniforms.
Yeah, the French Foreign
because
Legion.
that's what Hezbollah and that's what Hamas wear, right?
Sorry.
So
Okay, so you brought yours in the area of West Bank.
100%. And I'll just keep it to what I know, what I've experienced. With us in Hebron, we almost every single night, Hebron has the largest Hamas population outside of Gaza. The majority of all the attacks that happen across Israel, the terrorists are from Hebron. And many of the Hamas terrorists in Gaza, their families live in Hebron. 219,000 population, about 1,000 Jews. The majority are all of the Arab population are all, if they're not Hamas or PIJ, they are staunch supporters of them.
Well, we've seen ramming attacks in Jerusalem, stabbings,
Yes.
It's been nonstop.
It's a second intifada all over again. So every night, as far as our unit, we would have our kind of normal operational responsibilities, which is the security of all the Jewish areas in Hebron and the Jewish settlements. So whether that's patrols, whether it's static posts, and intertwined within that, every night we are going out on arrest missions. We are kicking in doors of Hamas terrorist homes, their families, where we know they store weapons, where they get money, or when we track down locations, facilities that are smuggling or holding weapons for them.
Foot patrols, or you go in your armored personnel carriers? I've seen some of your videos.
Both. You have, number one, what's called the blue zone and the red zone. The blue zone is where it's safe relatively to go. It's where we have Israeli citizens that live there. Patrols within the blue zone we do in these Toyota pickup trucks, right? So they have the cages to protect against rocks. That happens all the time. We get rocks, Molotov cocktails thrown at us. The red zone is only Arabs. There's no Jews there. So if we take Hebron and all the main areas where we have Jews, Israelis that reside there, there are checkpoints, gates, and at this time they were closed during the war. Everything was closed. Nobody was allowed to pass back and forth. So that's as far as the patrols. And then, of course, with that, we are always on 24/7 readiness as a QRF, a quick reaction force, to respond to any attacks that take place. Whether it's intelligence that comes in that there's a terrorist that just left their home right now. We just discovered his will, and he transferred all his money from his bank account to his wife. And he is right now walking towards X region to carry out whatever the attack type is, whether it's a stabbing, a shooting, a vehicle, a suicide bombing, or whether it's an attack that is presently taking place. There are shots fired. Get over there now.
Okay, so that happened to you in those.
That's happened. Everything I just mentioned. This is what we've been busy with. But the first month of October, the West Bank, the issues started going up. The violence started going up. And then it quickly dropped. It became very eerily quiet. We were still very busy attacking anything that is a potential problem and actively tracking down and making sure that anybody who so much as thinks about supporting Hamas or carrying out a terrorist attack will think twice. And it seemed to have worked. And then the last month and a half, all of a sudden, the attacks and the issues started to rise again.
It usually happens leading up to Ramadan.
Yes. So you have a large population that, put it to you this way, about a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, I remember we were sitting in a briefing and we had our intelligence officer give us the statistics of the mindset of the Arabs in Ayosh, in the West Bank. There was a big jump in the figures of those who suddenly saw violence as the only way against Israel and the Jews, who supported Hamas, who wanted Sinwar to be their next leader, and I'm not justifying, excusing anything. There's a cumulative effect. When we shut down all the borders within the West Bank, a lot of their business came from Israelis that go into their communities to give them, whether it's to get haircuts or to fix their cars, and conversely, them to be able to come in.
On the other side.
So you have a lot of people that now, for the last 2 years, they can't make a living. And now when you have the Palestinian Authority and Hamas that say, hey, here's $1,000 a month, go carry out an attack, you have a lot less effort to convince them to do that.
So I want to just understand something. So you spent 4 months, do you know exactly? I used to count.
107 days.
107 days.
Yes.
And on your days off, you got to travel a bit, and you went down to Kibbutz Be'eri, you went down to where the Nova Festival was. Why did you want to see it? What's the thing that stuck with you the most since you went?
I never truly imagined, for the life of me, being a Jew, being an Israeli, on the side of good, of humanity, and in the world, I never for the life of me imagined that with my own eyes I would see a second Holocaust. You know, you are a soldier, a police officer, you see things, it affects you as a human. You know, you become a father, you become a husband, a family man. You suddenly have this new dimension that is thrown on you that now opens up a new playing field for how you're going to be affected. My family, going back March 19th of 2012 in Toulouse, France, if you remember the terrorist attack on the Jewish day school, out of the 4 victims that were killed, the 8-year-old girl, Nir Maman, she's a relative of mine. That, thank you. So there's, I have a lot of things that to me are kind of anchored, you know, particularly with everything that I have started to hear, let alone what I saw before I even hit the ground in Israel, and I couldn't close my eyes at night just from listening to things that have occurred. When I was on the ground, why was it important for me? I barely took advantage of any of my days off. I went there to serve. I didn't go to go see family and to go see friends and to go to the beach. It wasn't, I didn't care. You know, if I'm going to do that stuff, I want to do it with my wife and my kids. So a lot of my days off, I gave up. I gave it to other soldiers who live there, who have families, who have businesses. I had kind of 2 important things for me when I knew I was going to have days off that I wanted to make sure that I do. One of them was to go to the South because I wanted to see things with my own eyes. I think it's important. And I have friends that were lost. And I wanted to go and see where, you know, what happened to them, how it happened. So
these are Ellie, Roe, some of your
yes,
some of your comrades.
Yes. So
just for our listeners, why they were lost so early? What were they doing? Just quickly.
Sure, and you know,
this is the Lothar unit, right?
Yes, I wasn't able to get a true debriefing and an insight as to what happened until literally about. I think it was 3 weeks ago. I had the chance to finally sit down with one of our guys from the unit, and you know, I have a napkin. We sat together at a coffee shop in Israel that night. We spent about 3 hours. Ido is his name, and he drew out for me the entire playing field in Kibbutz Be'eri and what happened to all of our guys. And I took a picture of it, and I have that napkin. It's staying with me. And just to quickly finish off the answer to your last question, the second thing I wanted to do that was important to me was to go to my former base, the Lotal base, to pick up a gift that Ellie left for me. Ellie served in our Naval Commando unit. When I served in the Lotal, I had several positions there. One of them, I was in charge of the hostage rescue section of the counter-terror school. About 2 years ago, when Ellie took command of the Lotal, became the new commander, that's when our relationship really started to develop. We had a lot of projects that we were planning. I was on the phone with him a lot. He was a big knife fanatic, like I've been my whole life. He had quite the collection, and we did a collaboration. I always wanted to design my own knife based on my unit and my service, and that was our knife. It's called the Khatul, the counter-terror knife, the Nir Lotal unit tribute counter-terror knife. So we designed that. So I sent him one of the knives. And I got this beautiful video from him. He says, Brother Nir, this is waiting for you when you get here to Israel. Opens up the box and shows me the knife that he had made for me, a nice commando knife with our Lotal unit emblem on it. And so the only thing I wanted to do since arriving, other than visiting the South, was to go pick up my knife. It took me almost 2 months before I was finally able, I had the opportunity, and I think I'm going to say the word courage because I don't know what else to say, to go to my base.
Emotionally ready to go, yeah.
So we pulled into the base. We parked. October 7th, Ellie came to base, started to get all the teams ready to deploy. And that night, before he deployed, he sent a message to all the command staff saying, Nir's knife is in my drawer. Make sure he gets it. And the next day he was killed. So...
Well, that's something that you'll be able to keep with you your whole life.
Yes.
As
absolutely.
a treasure.
Absolutely.
In the tragedy.
Yes.
So I'm just trying to pick up on one thing that you mentioned that is very important we haven't talked about. You mentioned your hostage expertise. Mm-hmm. You didn't do any hostage rescuing because that was in Gaza.
No, that was in
But you're
Gaza.
Watching this stuff. Can
Yes.
you talk to me about why the 3 Israeli hostages who were waving the white flags ended up being killed and how people are sitting with that?
100%. As best as I can answer from a professional aspect and then from, kind of try to teleport myself into their shoes of what I would have imagined went down. Look, we have 170,000 active duty soldiers, and the survival of the country depends on them, but more so is dependent on our reserve pool. So you have to understand that in a war situation like this, where all of a sudden you're showing up right now, and you have, the past year, you've been in studies, you've been working, you've been with the family.
So they weren't as sharp, these guys, is what you're saying.
I don't want to say they weren't as sharp, but this is people that all of a sudden were called in. They got a couple days of refresher training, up into gear, into Gaza you go. So that's already, it's a very problematic canvas you're working with. With that, add the stresses of Gaza. Gaza is a very scary place. Gaza is a very complicated terrain. We have in the south of Israel, the Center for Urban Warfare. It's this massive multi-million-dollar facility that is a blueprint replica of Gaza. It's where we train. One of my duties at the Lotal, at the counter-terrorism school, I was the commander in charge of the international training section. So every time we'd have special units, whether the U.S., special operations, or any other countries that are part of the global war on terror, before they would deploy to Iraq or Afghanistan, they would come to us. I was in charge of training them. Now, we would always make the kind of culmination phase of it a week. We would take them to that facility, and we'd stay there, and we would give them all of these missions to practice. You need to get into there. You got to avoid snipers. You got to watch out for suicide bombers. You have to apply conventional warfare, unconventional warfare, asymmetrical warfare, urban warfare, CQB, and you're culminating close quarters battle. So built up, confined space inside structures. And then you have to get your overall mission is you got to get to this particular address and you got to rescue the hostage. I can't tell you how many times, and again, this is not a criticism of any of them. Our units all around the world are allies. They're top notch. They have a lot of experience, very professional. But they would hit the wrong house. They would go down the wrong alleyway, and then you have the tunnels, and you have the alleyways. You have all the booby traps. So we're already starting with that as the terrain. You now have soldiers that have been sucked out of their civilian life and have been thrown into one of the most dangerous battlefields that there is. And that works a lot in your mind. You're exhausted. You have the fog of war. You're hearing every day of a battalion, a unit, a team of your friends that got blown up, that got killed, that got shot. You then have their calculated, their strategized way of taking a civilian, weaponizing a civilian to cause us, whether it's to second guess or whether it's to not pull the trigger. So I cannot speak to whether I would have done things differently if I was in the shoes of those soldiers that engaged those hostages. I'll tell you, I've been in situations, it is scary. You're suddenly at that point where you have to, you by yourself, do I pull the trigger or do I pull the trigger? If I pull the trigger and I'm wrong, you now have a whole, it's complicated to say. I feel sorry for everybody that's involved.
You're the soldier. You're the expert in extracting hostages. Why is it taking so long?
It's always, the greatest thing that can happen in a hostage rescue situation is where you know exactly where the hostage and the terrorists are. In Gaza right now, all the hostages, many were taken to different places. There were ones that were kept in tunnels. There were ones that were kept under Hamas watch. There are many of them that are being kept in random Palestinian homes, kept in booby-trapped locations where you simply, and that's what happened with Gilad Shalit, for example. Okay, you cannot go and touch a door or a window to try to get them out because you're simply going to get everybody killed. There's a lot of that's going on. They're being moved around. They are in places that they're inaccessible. I can tell you, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. There's a big chunk that the IDF and our intelligence service, they know, and it's almost at their fingertips to be able to kind of bring some of these hostages out of that situation, but they simply can't physically. It is the most complicated hostage situation that I have ever, in my 25 plus years of dealing with the subject of hostage rescue, that I know of. So this is part of the problem.
Are they consulting you on how to get them out? You're a hostage trainer.
No.
Hostage release trainer.
No.
You don't have anything to do with this now?
There's thousands like me that have taken over my position, that, the torch is still running. My upcoming assignment, we are going to be several weeks in Gaza. I only know part of what we're doing. I won't learn the rest until I arrive to my base and get signed in. One of the other issues with Gaza is you have to remember, generally when you have a hostage situation, you have a war situation, they're separate. Here we have both. So you have all that intertwined.
So you're going in not as a commando, you're going in as infantry. Or you don't know yet?
I'm in a commando unit. I'm in a commando unit that specializes with initial spearheading of taking over areas and doing things within an enemy occupied area. You
called yourselves and your IDF colleagues warriors in God's army, or on your post.
Sure.
Is this a spiritual battle for you as well? A religious battle, spiritual battle?
I think it's everything. I think that for me, it hits me on all fronts. I've always been a proud Jew. Have I been a good Jew? No, I've never been really religious. I have deviated, from God. I found God. I have, specifically to just answer very shortly, yes, it's made me more connected to our religion, to our roots, to our purpose. You go to a pro-Israel protest, and our people say, we just want peace for everybody. We just want, that's it, for the Palestinians and for us and for everybody. You go to their protest, they just want death for everybody. And so our values are very special. They're very unique. And so for me, yes, I am a lot more, I'm going to use the word connected to Judaism, to our religion, a lot more connected to God. I have a lot of people that ask me, like, what are you doing? You're 47 years old. You don't even have to go back. And you have a wife and you have 5 kids. And what are you doing? How can you even ask me that question? What am I doing? This is, go back 75 years. If our people only had the capabilities and the many soldiers like me who, there's no second talk here. I'm dropping. I have to go right now. I have a purpose for our people. I mean, if we only had that back then, many grandparents would have been alive, So for me, it's a non-negotiable. I'm very blessed. To have my wife who, as she says to me, if you have to stay another year, stay another year. I got the fort here. Do what you have to do. I can show you the text message from my daughter. She's 20 years old. And she sends me, I remember I was standing right there in the kitchen, and she sends me a text message. She said, is it true that you're going to Israel? I said, oh no, I messed up. This was supposed to happen this way. I said, look, right now I don't know what's going on. Everything is up in the air, but there's a good chance that I'm going to be going. And I already knew that I was going. So she sends me this message saying, look, as much as I never want you to leave home, our people need you more, so you need to go. So Yeah.
Says it all.
I will tell you, and I will tell you just on the topic of our people. I have friends of mine, from my units that were the first ones, October 7th, on the ground. Kibbutz Be'eri, for example, which was a long battle. It was a very long, very difficult battle. When they would reach houses, and a lot of the terrorists, it seemed like everything was neutralized, and they had to get the citizens to come out of their homes, to unbarricade themselves. And they were banging on doors saying, it's the IDF, you can come out. It's something very powerful that the IDF's code, to identify back and forth who the Israelis, the Jews were, was to say the Shema, the most important prayer for us. That when a lot of our commandos would reach inside a structure and they could see that somebody was there, they would tell them, do not move, repeat the Shema, the prayer, and then they would know right away that it's one of ours, and vice versa. So yes, there's a very big piece of this that's not just mission specific for me. If we don't do this, every soldier goes now to fight for our homeland, we're going to have nothing. But there is a part of it that is spiritual, that is religious, that is everything, all under one vein right now.
There's been reports on some UN officials have criticized Israel for maybe looting, maybe putting a flag in someone's home, to showboating, things like that, right? And also more dangerous allegations of actually sexually assaulting Palestinian civilians and or prisoners. What can you say about these things? Is it possible?
No.
More happens,
unequivocally false. It is propaganda being used by the other side because they know that there's enough fools out there that love to live in their blissful ignorance and don't care. We don't pull the trigger unless we have actual probable cause to be able to do so. There is none of that is going on, and it's the opposite. It's when you're carrying on your back the fact that you now have to you have to stay alive. You got to protect your homeland. By the same token, you now have to fight all of these allegations. A lot of our soldiers are trying to go the extra mile at showing the world what's going on. Standard protocol for us, it's always been this way. When we arrest terrorists or a suspected terrorist, you'll see them stripped down naked to nothing. We have no choice because enough times they ended up blowing up because of explosives. All right? So when, a couple of weeks back, when that was on the news, that these poor Palestinians who are being accused of being terrorists are sitting there in underwear and it's cold outside, almost the next day, all the groups of Palestinians you start to see getting arrested are now clothed. Now they got coveralls and they got blankets. So the IDF responds to that. Okay, if this is what the world thinks, well, let's see how we accommodate even just, rumors, so they see we're going the extra mile.
You were here for 10 days in Toronto?
I was here for exactly, I think it's 11 days today.
I took way too much time. It's been fascinating. I could talk another hour or two, but I won't. So I just want to thank you for sharing this time with me, and I'd like to wish you safe Godspeed and safe trip back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time as well.
And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. I last heard from Maman 5 days ago. He wasn't allowed to bring his phone with him while he's in Gaza, but he does have a GoPro camera on his helmet to record the action for himself and for IDF intelligence. Some of those clips might wind up on his social media channels too, where he remains unapologetic for some of the strong language he uses to describe the Palestinians. You can check the links in our show notes for how to learn more about Nir Maman, and thanks for listening to the CJN Daily.
Y'all remember that joke from Airplane? The old lady asked for some light reading.
How about this leaflet, famous Jewish sports legends?
But in actuality, that's changing. Jews are crushing it in sports around the world, and we are here to celebrate them.
Sandy Koufax gets his 10th strikeout.
Zach Hyman, his first career hat trick. 41 points for Diddy Avdia. It's Sue Bird's building.
I'm Gabe.
And I'm Jamie.
We love Jews and we love sports, but most of all, we love kvelling over Jews in sports.
Together we host Menschwarmers, the longest running Jewish sports podcast in the world. Listen and subscribe at thecjn.ca and wherever you find your podcasts.